welcome everyone here in the panel. So lovely to be sitting here with each of you whose work I admire and talking about one of my most favorite things to do in the world, which is to travel. And I've learned over the years as I've traveled different spaces, being a tourist, how to become, how to journey more gently and how to think about the environment. And I hope from each of your different perspectives, we can talk about it in terms of how we as citizens of the city and of the state journey with our own land and its ecosystems, and how we can bring in the visitor to our state to actually really engage with our land, perhaps not just as a tourist to come and go, but actually really look at the ecosystems of this space. So I will start with, being the literary festival. I'd like to start with a little quote from Maya Angelou. Um, Perhaps travel cannot prevent bigotry, but by demonstrating that all peoples cry, laugh, eat, worry, and die, it can introduce the idea that if we try and understand each other, we may even become friends. That's a quote by Maya Angelou. And I believe that it is also not just a relationship between people, but it also could, extend into a philosophy between a relationship between us and our environment. So this session today is all about talking about how we can travel green. And I'll start with Zorba. Tell us a little bit about your book, Zorba.
Hello? So in brief, we have a lot of brilliant people on the panel, so I won't take too much time. That's our book, Meghalaya Rivers. It's a labor of love. It took us about 6 years to write. And Auntie Pat, I'm very happy to see in the audience. She knows very well our trials and tribulations throughout the entire process. We've lost friends along the way during writing of this book. We've lost our own father. But yeah, throughout the entire thing, this book, it's testament to what we see and what we believe that is possible in Meghalaya, the beauty, the nature that is there. And much of it, I would say almost as much as 90% of it maybe is unseen. It's not well documented, and it may be fragmented in pieces, like maybe in some archive, someplace, somewhere, but this is the first time that we've been able to collate all of this and bring it together on one product. And as Mary quoted from Maya Angelou, I'd have one from Benjamin Disraeli, which is probably relevant to this book, which is that like Mary, after traveling around and coming back, and then we are able to only see our own place as a foreign land with fresh eyes. And we're very thankful that Meghalaya Rivers as a book is able to, in some parts, deliver that. And it's much more than a whitewater guidebook. It's more for anybody who's curious about the outdoors, about nature, and about Meghalaya in general. And we're also quite proud that it's the first of its kind, it's the only one of its kind in the entire country. So that's something we're quite proud of as well. Thank you.
So Zorba, this book was published about 3 years ago, if I'm
Yes,
not
that's right.
mistaken,
Yeah.
Has it brought in a curious traveler to you, because you also organize adventure camps, right?
I facilitate and I help with logistics, but I don't commercially do it myself. It's more like as part of the community.
Okay, but do you know that as a result of the book, have people been, come to discover Meghalaya through its rivers?
Definitely. We've had photographers coming in. We've had people coming from the botany background, because the maps in here are, we're quite happy with the maps. And also a lot of people from the research field. There's been a few people in history, in line and the study of history. They're interested in some of the folklore, folk stories, and that kind of stuff. And obviously the outdoor adventure traveler and other general travelers as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, when I first saw your book, the thing that hit me was actually, we always harp about how we're the wettest state, wettest place in the world, but we've never harped about our rivers. And really, actually, it really struck me that actually not only is it an interesting topic, but it's just so relevant also in terms of engaging a different kind of tourists perhaps to our state. Talking about folklore, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump a little bit uh, and not go one by one. I'm going to come to you, Nafi. because you've been doing these wonderful cultural tours, heritage tours. I haven't been for one, but I've gone for many different kinds of heritage tours, and I think that also with our with a traveler who comes here, or even as a Shillongite, so many of us want to sort of discover our state differently, even our own city differently. But we don't know of enough people, organizations that are actually facilitating that. Can you talk a little bit about your heritage tours that you've been organizing?
So I'll start first with how I started my journey as an archaeologist and
I
how.
think, sorry to interrupt you there, but I think you had given us some images, no?
Yeah, yeah.
If we have them ready, Ashish, could we have them on? Yeah? So we'll have some visual context to this.
Okay.
We could start, and Ashish, just give me a cue when you've started the. Oh, yeah. Sure.
Okay, so I started my journey as an archaeologist. Actually, I wanted to become an archaeologist when I was in class 3. When my teacher, Miss Reelan Youngrai in Loreto, she talked about the Harappan and the Egyptian civilization. Little did I know that 14 years later, I would be excavating the Harappan burial site. Then that was when I also realized that I needed to come back home and start to unearth the hidden treasures of Meghalaya. So I also wanted to bridge the gap between people and heritage because there's not much information when we search online about these heritage sites. So I started these heritage walks and I started nature walks and taking people to experience heritage, food, culture, nature. So yeah, so it's been 4 years now that I've started these heritage walks and I've done more than 50 of them in and around Khasi and Jaintia Hills. So we've had participants right from young kids to students to adults, and it has been an amazing journey because when we what these heritage walks contribute to the society is that it creates a kind of an awareness regarding cultural heritage, and also it teaches people how to conserve and preserve these sites, the artifacts and material culture, and also to understand more about them.
Thank you, Nafi. I'm going to now jump to both Divya and Varun. I think you can choose who would like to respond to which question. Is that all right? Yeah? Um, so, when we had our conversation pre this panel and we spoke about citizen involvement and how when you had this film screening recently on the Gibbons, was it? Yes. And there was such a great response. I just noticed it also, and I had also registered for it and watched it. And it was just so encouraging to know that there were so many people in Shillong interested about the environment. I don't think that growing up, I actually didn't know that Gibbons existed in Shillong. I've returned after many years, and I'm also coming back to sort of try and discover my own environment here. But can we speak a bit about the city, the citizens of the city, and the sort of the potential of young citizens' involvement in engaging with the environment and in all of the ways in which it needs to be conserved and preserved and talked about and lived with.
I can answer that. Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think, growing up in Shillong, being a Shillong boy, I feel that I see a big difference in terms of how people are engaging with the environment, are engaging with the outdoors, engaging with nature. I think I would call it even a movement, in fact, of just appreciation of our environment and nature. And it's an amazing thing to see. There is a lot of interest in, we have a lot of potential in terms of just, escapades from Shillong. You just drive, you don't even have to drive more than an hour, and you have amazing places to go to. And from an adventure tourism perspective, I think it's really been catching on. There's been a lot of interest, and you see, if you just walk around in Shillong today, you see so many people on bicycles, which was something that was unimaginable at that when I was a child. I mean, there was hardly anybody doing that kind of thing. So overall, I feel that there is a lot of interest among our youth, a lot of interest in the younger generations in terms of just appreciating and being interested in the wild and in being interested in nature and being interested in the environment around us. So I think this is a great opportunity to kind of build and strengthen the foundation for such appreciation. We just talked about a little while ago about the, Zorba's initiative with the campfire trails and how so many students were engaged and, just being aware of their environment and being aware of how you can have sustainable, rural, nature-based tourism. I think so that definitely is one way in which citizens can get involved, and I think that is definitely an important direction in which we need to go. The other aspect that I would probably like to highlight here is that the other thing that's working for us in Shillong is that we have historically been an education capital for Northeast India. We've had we are privileged to have some really good educational institutions in the city. And there are people who are coming from all over the region to study here. And I think you see that it's quite apparent in when you interact with people who have studied and graduated from Shillong in terms of, that education system kind of finding its way in terms of how people think and that I think has a role to play in terms of what I'm talking about in terms of appreciating nature and the wilderness. And I feel we can certainly build on that kind of a foundation that we have to get into what is referred to as from a wildlife. I mean, so I was talking about the outdoors in general, but if you're talking about wildlife and nature and maybe engaging with that to try and understand that better. What do we have around us in terms of the animals that are there? How do we try and document that? If you want to engage with that kind of an aspect, then there is this whole idea of what is called citizen science. There are platforms where this is happening countrywide. There's this whole platform called eBird, where anybody who's interested in watching birds can just go out, and document what birds they saw. And it goes into this database and anybody can then visualize. I think Zorba is an active member of eBird. And so you can visualize what's there in your backyard. And I feel that somewhere we can go a step further just because there is so much of interest in our youth and our younger generations in terms of our nature and environment, to have different kinds of ways in which citizens can engage with science. There are different ways in which youngsters and people of Shillong society can just go a little bit away from Shillong or even within Shillong, involved in various kinds of ways in which they can document, species which can then have some scientific value and can then be used for some inference about what's going on with these species, what's going on with our wildlife. And in that respect, we as an organization are very interested in that kind of work, and we would be very interested to encourage and engage with people of Shillong, younger generations of Shillong, in documenting different kinds of wildlife, whether it's birds or whether it's like I was thinking about within Shillong we have an endemic frog species which is found only in and just around Shillong and it's not found anywhere else. And and they're found in people's backyards, they're found in my, my own home. And where have we haven't really had that appreciation as yet of this is an incredible thing. And I think if we got people interested and excited and, kind of went around in a systematic, scientific manner to try and document all of these things, we could have a very rich, rich assemblage of knowledge in terms of our environment and nature around us. I think it's a great opportunity that we can engage
I think
with.
that's really interesting that you bring that up because, when we think about environment, and correct me if I'm wrong, we tend to always think of it outside of the city. And you've just brought out the fact that, there is so much within the city itself to discover as well. And I don't think that we do enough of that. And, I hope that you do many more of these, awareness, engagement projects. And, there's so much potential for it, right? If I may, Divya, address this to you. There was a lot there which spoke about the need, all of these different layers of what exists, and that needs to be studied and researched. A lot of it, I think that, we're also looking at a state where there is a very high forest cover, and that forest cover is primarily community owned. It is also rural communities, and I think that our rural communities who don't have what we call, the formal educational background, but have always lived with the environment and have deep, deep knowledge of how to understand the environment and how to, I don't know, to also maybe preserve and conserve in the role they play. So, what can you just tell me a bit about, from your organization's perspective, how are you working with these custodians? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's on, right? Thanks, Mary. So the amazing thing about Meghalaya is, like you said, we have a high proportion of forests, and a large proportion of that forest, up to 90% of that forest, is actually owned and managed by communities. So they are the custodians of the forest, they are the guardians of the forest. And what we really need to do is appreciate, acknowledge, work with that, and support that. So at Conservation Initiatives, we work pretty extensively with community-based conservation. And we help and support the community in their efforts to conserve the forest. So they are the champions of the conservation effort, and we are just there to support them. And that happens in various different ways. We provide technical support in terms of, for instance, in terms of putting out camera traps to assess what kind of species there are, or we put out audio recorders to assess how many gibbons there are. We also bring to light the amazing richness that they have to other people. Like, for instance, the webinar, one of the things that we were trying to do is show the rest of the world and show all of Shillong that there is this, not just this amazing landscape, but there are these amazing set of people who are putting in a lot of effort to conserve and preserve this landscape such that the next generation can also enjoy them. So we help with awareness programs both within the community as well as outside. We try to get media coverage of like, these kind of these efforts. And also we help see, ultimately there also has to be some sort of alternative livelihoods or wildlife friendly livelihoods that need to come in place, such that there are also incentives for conserving forests. So we work a lot with Zarba as well. One of those incentives is ecotourism, which is very relevant, I guess, for this panel. And ecotourism, and a very community-based, grounded community-based tourism, which is very much in line with conservation and community conservation efforts that people are putting in, I think can be a fantastic incentive to conserve forests, and a sort of a win-win situation where the local community benefits, the forests benefit, the wildlife benefits, and everybody else, the tourists benefit, because they are really experiencing nature, and they're experiencing the culture that is preserving that nature.
I'm completely on board with you with that, but we know that in reality, in terms of how tourism is put out there and the policies in place, doesn't always work that way. And there's a flip side to when we publicize a space, what does it do to that space in the community? So I will come to you, Lorish. Inspiring green journeys. And specifically in this, you've been doing this a lot in the north of India and then in the northeast. And especially in Meghalaya, you've been based here for quite many years now. Tell us a little bit about the kind of traveler you're engaging, the good and the bad side. You know this state quite well by its tourist spots.
Thank you for having me. So yeah, I've been now in the Northeast for 6 years, and amazed by the biodiversity in terms of river, in terms of archaeology, in terms of wildlife biodiversity. And we've been really trying to somehow educate the travelers who are coming, because India is changing very fast, and people are now able to travel, and with the pandemic also they have been forced somehow to travel only within India because they were not allowed to travel abroad. So we have seen a rise of people within the country coming to the Northeast, and it is our duty, and we really will try to make people understand, and when they come in the place they need to slow down to the pace. So coming to Meghalaya or trying to visit like 3-4 states in 12 days, we are telling people like it's not even feasible physically for them. Also they won't even enjoy it, they will go back home very tired. So we are really trying to tell people that if you want to visit Meghalaya, you have to slow down. So we really advocate this slow tourism philosophy, and we also try to people to come in small groups, because in Meghalaya you come for the nature, you come for the rural lifestyle also. So if you arrive when you are 10 people and you want to blast music and pollute the place and litter the place, then you have a really bad example also. So we really try to make people come in small groups, so they don't invade the space of the people, and they respect, and there is a real communication and exchange. They are not just people who are coming to just tick a box. You know, I've done Ladakh, I've done Meghalaya. They really need to come and experience the place, and spend at least 3-4 days in the same place. Stay in a homestay more than in a hotel. Like, there is a huge potential. Northeast people are among the most hospitable people I've seen in India, and we really need to focus on the homestay capacity, because it brings income to the local community. Most of the food you're going to enjoy is local food. You know, you won't have like food from another place, from North India or South India. Meghalaya is a huge basket of fruits, of herbs, of spices, of vegetables. Just going to the local market with a local guide is an incredible experience. So the food is coming from way there. There is a very short circuit between the food. You can improvise a cooking class in the kitchen with your host. They are the best guide also, because they know the place. It's not the staff who is coming from, you know, Bihar or for UP. So they are really from the place, and they are willing to come with you to the market. So we are really trying to bring this forward, and also I was saying, educate the travelers, like, to avoid like plastic bottles. I really appreciate that on this planet there's no plastic bottles, because you know, you need to be the change you want to see in the world also. And take your own bag also when you go to the markets. People are always very surprised when we go to the market and we have our own bags, you know, because this is traditional in Meghalaya. Everybody's carrying a fabric bag. Everything is wrapped in leaves, natural leaves, but it's changing very fast. So you have to be an example also for the local community, to say, guys, you know, there is so much here already on spot that you don't need to import so much junk food and
So in terms of the percentage of like tourists that you work with who's come here in the last pre-COVID time,
Yeah.
They have primarily been foreign travelers who've come here?
Yeah, me being from France myself, I've really trying to promote the out of the beaten track places in India. So when people are asking about the trip in Rajasthan or Kerala, I'm not really interested, because I'm really more passionate about places where people are not going. So just before COVID, we did a very interesting trip. Also, we did a survival class in the Northeast. It was one of the first happening in India, and I think in the Northeast, where we brought a group of 10 travelers from France. Most of them, it was their first trip in India, and we took them in places in the southwest Khasi Hills near Nongna, in a community which is barely visited by foreign travelers, and we spent 4 days with local hunters and these 10 people to experience the survival. So how to make a fire, how to cook in bamboo, how to make a hut based off whatever you could find. And just a small anecdote which was quite funny, because we took in our bag, the guide and me, 4 kilos of rice, just in case, you know, because we were also like, it was a baptism for fire. We were not really knowing what to expect.
I don't
So
know
it
if I
was-
would call that a survivor class. I'll call it, you know, like a refreshing course on how to live.
Yeah, exactly, because that's how people live actually.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
how they are living.
Yeah.
They go in the forest and get whatever they find. Anyway,
So very quick question,
yes.
because
No, I'm just not done.
Sorry,
We took
yeah.
4 kilos of rice
Mhm.
for about 15 people, and we came back with 3 kilos of rice. We
There was
barely used
enough.
it, because
Mhm.
nature was providing
Exactly.
everything, from the roots to the fruits. Everything was already there. So people were amazed, you know, to see that you don't need to bring anything. Everything is already provided.
So yeah, on that, what I wanted to very quickly ask you, and this is slightly naughty of me to ask, is there a very large difference between the international traveler here to the Indian tourist who comes here?
Yeah, yes, it's quite different, the way people want to travel. The guests we are having are seasoned travelers. You don't come to the Northeast on the first trip to India, so they have already been in India for quite some trips. They have visited Rajasthan, Kerala, Ladakh, and they love the country, but they want to visit it some more places. And when they come to the Northeast, they are really surprised positively because it's nothing compared to India.
Is there also a larger spending power by an international tourist?
I don't think so. I think that also the lifestyle of Indians and the incomes, and people have also traveled abroad, so we can see a rise also of well-seasoned travelers also within India.
Okay, that's good to know, because I think it's also, when we're looking at how people spend, it's, when we're looking at the economy of tourism, we also have to see the spending capacity. So there is this popular perception that most of our tourists in this state, at least, when I speak to local cab drivers, and that a lot of the tourists comes in from, just the next state or the state after, and they don't spend too much. So it's good for us to know that there is a, for those of us who are wanting to do tourist initiatives, that there is spending power, and maybe there's something to really bank on to also create that, educated traveler, right? Any last thoughts? I mean, I wish we had so much. I thought we would do many more question rounds, but I just leave it to each of you. Like, if you really wanted to look at this city, this state, and, like a really informed way of traveling and discovering the state for the people within and people out, any thoughts from each of you of what you would like, what you dream? Yeah.
While everybody's thinking, I'll just share one quick thought. I really appreciate Mary for organizing this panel, especially
Thank
since
you,
we have
Zalpa.
an archaeologist who's doing heritage walks. You have wildlife scientists who are starting to look at avenues into ecotourism. A fully fledged, I didn't know Laurie is so highly studied in the line of tourism, and he's doing that very well as well. And I think this is a very important thing to look for the future of Meghalaya's tourism, is you need passion and you need training to get into whatever lines of tourism that you want to get into. And this is where we're lacking very much as a state. We have anybody who's just a local, who's just, a young person, young
Requires
boy or girl.
holistic knowledge,
Yeah.
about many things.
So
right? Yeah.
many of the young friends that we have, they want to get into the line of tourism, not because they love tourism, but it's because they need a job, which is a fair reason to get into anything. But my request, whether it be to society at large or to the government, is that we need to increase specialized skills, to develop specialized skill sets, to merge that with whatever industry. And in this case, if we're talking about tourism, I think these are like the perfect examples, the perfect shining examples that we need. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Zorba. Any thoughts?
Can I just add?
Yes?
So I think one thing that we really need to do, and I think it touches upon some of the points that we were discussing just now, which is that somewhere, and this relates specifically to the example that Divya was giving about communities that we are working with for conservation, and where ecotourism can be a potential source of a win-win solution. Somewhere we need a model which moves away from the SORA model of tourism. I think we need, we need niche tourism for these kind of places, such that, it's low footfall, but, sufficiently sustainable from an economic standpoint for the local community
Absolutely.
to still achieve the tourism gains, but at the same time ensure that nature and the wild spaces remain, pristine. So I think that is really important, and I'm sure if we put heads together, we can develop a model like that. And somewhere the challenge also is in being able to engage with the, like the local communities, because they have seen the opposite model, right? And so then
Absolutely.
their expectations are kind of shaped by that. But it requires some effort, but I think it can be, an alternative idea can be kind of, I think can be, what's the word, fostered in their thinking if we just engage right. So that would be my
Thank you.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just adding to what both of them were saying, across the globe, there's tourism in many wildlife spots, many nature spots, and in the recent years, there has been a push towards ecotourism in a true sense, where there are just basically the returns from tourism go back to the people who live over there, where it's sustainable, it's environmentally friendly, it's wildlife friendly, it's conservation friendly. there has been a movement, but it has not been it has not been easy. It's been difficult. In Meghalaya, there is already a system in place where there are traditional community-based mechanisms to conserve forests and traditional community-based mechanisms to have such a system happening. And I think that's a fantastic opportunity. We need to take cognizance of that, of these traditional community systems, community-based systems, and have a true model of ecotourism that I think the globe can look at as like the example to follow.
I really hope so too. Yeah. Any thoughts, Nafi and Larish?
Yes, I'm going to address also the elephant in the room. Meghalaya is a green paradise. The full northeast area is one of the 10 richest biodiversity hotspots in the world, compared to Costa Rica or very outstanding places where you have like a huge potential for ecotourism. But you can see the landscapes is changing rapidly in Meghalaya with all these cement factory like popping up like mushrooms, the illegal coal mining, which cannot be ignored anymore. You know, the government really have to stop this partnership with these lobbies, because this is going to completely destroy the potential. There are caves which are being destroyed. There's not even a proper mapping of these caves. They are being wiped out from Meghalaya. There's a lack of facilities in terms of accommodation. Also, I visited Garo Hills, which has also a huge potential, because we are focusing just on the Khasi Hills with Cherrapunji, Dauki. People are staying in Shillong. They are just visiting on one day, coming back to spend the night in Shillong. It doesn't make sense. And Garo Hills, there's no proper roads, no proper accommodation. But when you visit the place over there, the national parks are outstanding. So the training of the local people, the involvement of the communities over there could make a great income also for these places.
Nafi, any thoughts? Thank you, Larish.
Okay, so since I've been traveling a lot in this area, what I realized was that the villages still need a lot of awareness program. Like Zorba was saying, training for these people who are guiding these tours. We do need awareness programs when it comes to the heritage sites before turning them into tourist spots. Because most of the places that I've visited, okay, all these abandoned settlements, you can see that all these material from the sites have been taken and used for road construction. They have been used for many other various purposes. So for my opinion is that we should have more awareness program in and around the state with regards to the heritage as well.
I think, you know, all of us here, if I may, would make a great advisory panel to the tourism department. So maybe we should pitch that. Kongpat, what do you think? And on that note, may I thank you to each of you, and may I open it up to anyone who might have a question? Anyone has a question? Yes, there's a question. Can we please have the mic? From Kongpat, please.
I want to address this to Varun and Divya. I don't know if you visited Maulangot, which is completely barren, bald. And what do you have to say about such spaces? Of course, now they've brought that team from South India to green up the place. They are involving communities. But what do you think has led to such barrenness? Because you're talking about community forests, community conservation, but where is that community? Does it even exist?
No, definitely there are immense threats to the forest and immense threats to the wildlife that are there. Just for instance, the western hulock gibbon, which we were talking about, incidentally, which is the only wild ape that we have in India. It's a fascinating thing that we have an ape over here. But that one species which we should be protecting and preserving and securing was a few years back listed as one of 25 most endangered primate species across the world. So there is no doubt that there are threats. We work with community-based conservation, but this doesn't mean that all communities conserve their forests. There are very serious pressures, very, very strong external pressures that are pushing deforestation, and we are constantly having to fight those threats. And the community as well, there are and the community is also not homogeneous. So there are conservation leaders in the community, but there are also some people who are not so interested in conservation. So I think our job as outsiders and as an entire citizenry of Meghalaya is to stand up and say that no, we have to stop these pressures. Like Lorish was saying, the landscapes are changing extremely fast. We are losing, even though it is a high forest cover, we are losing those forests extremely fast. And it's critical that today we stand up and we say that no, that's no longer okay. We want to preserve these forests. We want to preserve this wildlife. We want the clouded leopard to continue to be there, the western hula gibbon to continue to be there, and take a very firm stand. And I think that the government as well has a pretty strong role to play in it, as well as creating incentives and measures such as ecotourism, which can help both support local livelihoods as well as conservation. You want to add?
If I can just add to that, I guess these things are so interconnected, no? So I mean, the thing is that many communities might engage in more destructive practices, but perhaps in certain situations at least, you know, those destructive forces have been able to reach out and provide a blueprint of a dream of what might be actually a short-term gain, but lead to long-term, you know, impoverishment of their environment. If we are able to step in at the right time and provide an alternative idea and another viewpoint, you know, then maybe perhaps some of the communities who are engaging in some of these things may have a different view and wonder, should we do this, or do we take a step back, think about it, and go a different path?
Yeah. Any other question? Yeah? One question. Can we please have the mic?
Yeah, hi. My question is to the entire panel. So right now we all spoke about, like, you discussed about the economic side of the tourism and like how basically it will be sustainable to bring more tourism and responsible tourism and all. So by and large, most of these is like what I got the perspective is it's catered towards most people, tourists coming from outside India and outside the state of Meghalaya. So my question is, like, what do you guys think about basically developing an initiative of tourism where like a local people or youth within Meghalaya villages has an avenue or has an opportunity to explore Meghalaya in different places also, which sometimes is ignored because it's mostly like economically driven, and that's why it's morely catered to basically tourists coming from outside Meghalaya. So my question is to anybody who
Thank
can
you for
answer.
that question. You know, we did speak quite a bit about how we discover internally within the city and within the state. You know, to sort of open up ways in which we can travel and really journey through our own state within, for our citizens within. Who would like to take that question? Any one of you? Yeah? Sorba, Nafi, you might also want to take that.
I think Nafi can add a point if she sees I've said anything wrong. Internally within the state, that's a very good point. Internally within the state, what happens a lot, it's not very organized in the manner that you're asking, but what happens is through schools or colleges or localities or, you know, from somebody's home village or a clan or even from the churches, there's always some group or the other who'll, you know, you'll call it the typical words, no, that we've all grown up, I don't know, Nafi, if she studied here, excursion, field trip, outing. So it's that, like, you know, from the locality, we might have a thing and we'll all go to destination X or destination Y. So there isn't anything organized in that sense. But one thing I'd like to add to what you're saying, which is very unique to Meghalaya, is that we have a very excellent system of grassroots public transportation, where you can travel almost anywhere for very little money, and you don't have to hire a Swift Desire with a yellow license plate. So it's pretty easy to travel in Meghalaya if you're a local and if you know which bus is connecting which sumo is going around the place. So that way, there isn't anything much organized, but I think a lot of stuff happens at the grassroots.
And Nafi, can you tell us a little bit, actually, just to respond to that question, which is so interesting for me, about the children you take out on tours? You told me a little about the children that you take out on tours, right? Can you tell us a little bit about the children, like the age group, and also like their reactions when you take them to these spaces?
Okay, so I have taken kids from the orphanages here in Shillong to give them an experience of what it's like to visit museums and all that. So obviously they were thrilled because they don't see anything like this. They've only read about these things in books, you know, in classrooms, hearing the lectures from the teachers. So it's always good to visit, to take out these students from the four walls of the classroom, take them out, let them experience, let them see things.
Thank you. So I think on that note, we will have to end. We are over our time. No, Nida? Yeah? Thank you so much. And Nida, maybe you'll make the announcement for the next panel. It was a great conversation. I think it could have continued for a very long time. But thank you, each of you. Yeah.
Thank you, speakers. I hope with this session we become more aware with the culture of conservation and preservation. Now we present the speakers with the mementos.